For a totalitarian dictator, though, influence was not enough to maintain control and power. Stalin set about to purge the Communist Party. He attacked the old Bolsheviks and tried to drive them out, including Trotsky. Trotsky had to flee the Soviet Union for his life. Inside the Soviet Union, Stalin began a process of Russification. Now this is kind of odd because Stalin himself was from Georgia, he was a Georgian. But he recognized that the dominant ethnic group within the Soviet Union were Russians. And while communist ideology played down the role of ethnicity, claiming that nationalism and ethnicity were a bourgeois conspiracy against the workers, Stalin realized that he could seize control and gain more political power if he elevated and favored Russians within the empire. And so he began to relocate ethnic groups throughout the empire. He either moved out entire ethnic groups, like the Tatars from Crimea, or he simply relocated sections or minorities in the population, like the Poles, and moved them to other parts of the Soviet Union. He replaced those populations with Russians. And so that by the end or the fall of the Soviet Union, there were significant minority Russian populations in all 15 of the Soviet republics. We don't know the stats for the 1930s because it was not something that Stalin wanted to share or advocate. But he was doing it nonetheless. The period from 1936 to 1938 were known as the Great Purges. In this period, he seized control of the Secretariat for himself. He drove out the remaining old Bolsheviks. He charged them with crimes against the state. He used the Russian secret police or the Soviet secret police to make this happen. The secret police went through various name changes, the Cheka, the GRU, the NKVD. Most prominently, we know it as the KGB. But under any name, it was the same. They hunted down political criminals, people who dissented from the Communist Party. Once the secret police arrested someone, usually at night, under the cover of darkness, creating as much fear as possible among the neighbors, political criminals were put on trial. Stalin put cameras in the courtroom so that everyone in the Soviet Union could see that there were still counter-revolutionary forces, dangerous forces, working to overthrow the communist regime, trying to reestablish either the monarchy or working on behalf of Western governments. We've already seen the views of Avdyenko. He completely adored Joseph Stalin, or at least faked it good enough that Stalin would allow him to write and publish and spread the word. But there were other people who wrote about what was happening within the Soviet Union. Most famous of the dissenters was Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and he compiled his experiences in what's called the Gulag Archipelago. Gulags were work camps in Siberia and in the wilderness of the Soviet Union. Archipelago refers to a group of islands. And so Solzhenitsyn referred to these gulags as a group of islands, communities stretching across Eastern Soviet Union. And contrast Solzhenitsyn's view of life in the Soviet Union with Avdyenko. The life of the natives of the gulags, consist of work, of starvation, cold, and cunning. This work, for those who are unable to push others out of the way and set themselves up in a soft spot, is self-same general work, which raises socialism out of the earth and drives us down into the earth. One cannot enumerate nor cover up all the different aspects of work, nor wrap your tongue about them. To push a wheelbarrow, to carry a hand barrel, to upload bricks barehanded, the skin quickly wears off of the fingers. To haul bricks on one's own back by a goat, a shoulder barrel. to break up stone or coal in a quarry or mine, to dig clay or sand, to hack out 8 cubic yards of gold-bearing ore with a pick and haul them to the screening apparatus. Yes, and generally at the same time, one could be in an agricultural camp. You can do every kind of peasant work, and there is no better work than that. You'll grab something from the ground for yourself. Their summer work day is sometimes 16 hours long. I don't know how it was 16, but for many it was 13 hours long on earth-moving work in Carlog and the northern logging operations. And there were hours on the job itself over and above the 3 miles walk to the forest and back. And how did they feed them in return? They poured water into a pot, and the best one might expect was that they would drop unscrubbed small potatoes into it, but otherwise black cabbage, beet tops, and all types of trash. Sleeping shelves in 2 stories. Sleeping shelves in 3 stories. Or as a sign of luxury, multiple bunks. The boards most often were bare with nothing on them at all, and some of the work parties they steal so thoroughly that nothing government issue is given out at all, and no one keeps anything of their own in the barracks. Some of the barracks are so infested with insects that even 4 days fumigating with burning sulfur doesn't help. And when the summer the Zeeks go out to sleep on the ground in the camp compound, the bed bugs crawl after them and feed on them even there. And then the Zeeks boil their lice off of their underwear in their mess tins after dining from them. This was a horrific existence in the labor camps. Stalin used gulags, labor camps, to work his political opponents to death. When word got out about these gulags, these political labor camps, they created fear and terror in the population, convincing people they needed to follow the directives of the Communist Party.